Roberts with Bill Barlee. The dying miner theory, the source of the gold in the Atlin region.
Yeah, undoubtedly one of the most well-documented theories out of that particular district, right? And it's well documented because we have the whole story right from the beginning to the end. Now, in the early 1890s, there was a hotel in Juneau, Alaska, and it was Millard McKinnon owned the hotel. It was called the Circle City Hotel, and at that particular juncture, an old miner came into the hotel. He was sick. He was obviously dying. George Miller, who was one of the owners, took care of him, and he took care of him so well, the old miner, just prior to his drawing his last breath, gave Miller a map and directions to find a creek. He said he and a band of miners had mined years previously. We don't know how many years previously. Could have been the late 1880s, undoubtedly the early 1890s, no later than that. So it preceded the Klondike Rush. And Miller was so intrigued by the story of the old man, whom he believed, and the map, which was so accurate. But remember, this is a map of an area that hadn't been mapped by the Dominion government. So he was kind of flying blind to a degree, but the directions were so good that Miller in 1896, prior really to the discovery of the Klondike Rush, went into this area, crossed Atlin Lake, went onto a creek and found some old sluice boxes there, indicating that miners had been there. And although he wasn't an experienced miner, he soon found lead gold, which was very, very coarse gold, nuggety gold. Stayed there as long as his supplies lasted him, and then went back to his hotel in Juneau. By that time, the Yukon Rush, or the Klondike Rush, had started. And it eclipsed, really, his rush. But he decided to keep it quiet, and he did keep it quiet for 2 years. Finally, in 1898, he decided to tell his brother, a guy called Fritz Miller, probably Mueller was the original name, and a Canadian from Nova Scotia called Kenneth McLaren. He gave them the map, he gave them the directions, told them to follow his route, which they did. And in the midsummer of 1898, Miller and McLaren put the first discovery stakes in on a creek called Pine Creek, right near the old workings of the original miners that had been there. Now, to record these claims, they thought they were in the Northwest Territories. They weren't. They were in northern British Columbia, but the maps weren't accurate enough. So they went to Tagish Post, and in Tagish Post, in charge of Tagish Post, was Inspector Darcy Strickland, who happened to be my great-uncle. And he was so intrigued by this, and by the gold they showed him, which was coarse gold, lead gold all the way, that he and his whole detachment, another 11 constables, left the post, just temporarily, to go down and stake Pine Creek.
Just put up a sign saying, on holiday.
That's right, above and below the discovery claim put in by both Miller and McLaren. And so Pine Creek became the premier creek in 1899 of the Atlin Creek Rush. And of course, after Pine Creek, they discovered Spruce Creek by a guy called Marius, and then they discovered a number of other creeks, Birch Creek and Boulder Creek and Ruby Creek and Otter Creek and Wright Creek and McKee and the O'Donnell. So there were about 10 creeks, very, very marvelous creeks as far as coarse gold was concerned, but kind of a restricted area. And because of this unique discovery, now that the Yukon was, or the Klondike was a little bit on the wane, Atlin came to the forefront, and it was found to be in British Columbia, and they had to re-record, they had to actually have a commission sent up there to re-record all these original claims.
All right, so that's the story, telling you, proving once and for all, to always be kind to old, sick miners.
That's right.
And that if you're in a position of responsibility, take a couple of days off to go in and look it over yourself.
That's right, and some of the maps they give you might even be accurate.
Might even be accurate. That's a good point. That brings us to I guess the first of our historic photographs. You have an album. Where did you pick up this album?
Well, I purchased the album some years ago for a considerable sum of money from a bookseller in Vancouver, Stephen Lunsford. And this is an album taken by the Muirhead brothers, and they were some of the most famous photographers in the Atlin district.
These were the guys, and these guys are holding up. They're not record-setting nuggets, but they're holding up nuggets. They look so young, the two guys on the left.
Well, yeah, and the guy in the middle especially, he's about 14 years old, very small, isn't full-grown at all. The owner is on the right. This is W. Breen, the owner on the right, and he's holding about a 1.5-ounce nugget, and the man on the left is holding probably a 1/2 or 3/4 ounce nugget. And they're right on Pine Creek. So this is how the first diggings on Pine Creek were tackled.
That's Pine Creek way off in the distance up in the left corner.
Yes, it is. And beyond that is Pine City or Discovery. It was called by both names, and known even today as either Pine City or Discovery. And they're piping the water. They're actually running the water in on a sluice box flume. and this is to their working. See the miners in the lower right-hand part of the photograph.
There's not much left of Pine Creek there. This is another method of mining. We haven't seen much of hydraulic mining, but that's what this is.
Yeah, this is taken about 1901, and so they were starting to hydraulic as early as 1901, and you can see where they're bringing down the head of water, down the pipes right down to the bottom, and there's your giant or your monitor, and that gives you a close-up of it. So they're sluicing down or hydraulicking down the gravel, and the gravel flows through a bedrock cut there, which comes down to the sluice box, and that's a fairly short sluice box. So they would get the coarse gold, but they'd probably lose a considerable portion of the fine gold, Mike.
There's a guy at the head of the monitor aiming it. There's another guy at the top of the sluice box. He's just shoveling the slurry in there to beat the band.
That's right. He's trying to keep the box clean. Yeah.
All right. Here's another. Now, this is an amazing device. The creativeness of early miners never ceases to amaze me. I've named it the muckraker. What is it designed to do?
Well, the owner is sitting in the background there, and he's handling it, and it's actually going in and takes out the muck from the bottom, and it works in reverse. That goes around, and those little catches, they actually catch the muck at the bottom of that little hole they're working in, and it runs it up that box. So it pulls it right up the box and dumps it into the sluice, and they keep on digging into that rather than throwing right into the box. Whether that was efficient or not is highly debatable, Mike.
Some early technologist trying his craft.
Yeah.
There. This is what they're after.
Well, sure. These are some of the nuggets. The one on the left is 3 troy pounds. Now, there's 12 ounces to a pound troy in gold, so that's 36 ounces. That's a 3 troy pound nugget. And the one on the right is 28 ounces, a little over 2 pounds. The one on the left was from the most famous creek in the Atlin district, and this was Spruce Creek, which has produced, Mike, probably in the last 85 to 90 years, about 20 tons of gold now. 20 tons of placer gold.
Now, those weren't big nuggets as nuggets go.
Well, no, they weren't. I mean, these nuggets were large, but the larger nuggets were up to 7 pounds.
7 pounds?
Yeah, the Weston Hoffman nugget was 83 ounces, which is almost 7 pounds.
Got some of these wonderful artifacts that you've brought to us. This, I would think that the early miners would have enjoyed something a little lighter, but where would this unit be used?
Well, that was used, it could have been used underground, but it's probably used for cleaning bedrock. And it's ideal for cleaning bedrock. So the very, very good gold would be thrown into that, and they could go along and sweep right into that, Mike, putting that on bedrock and then using a whisk or something to sweep right into it. Or they could actually use a pair of tweezers or a sniping tool and put the gold right into that. So that's a very unusual item. Don't find many anymore.
Sort of a gold dustbin, eh?
That's almost.
This, I mean, this doesn't look like a